how can a music theatre performer create a successful self-tape?
Do you mean do you mean in the sense of how can you self-tape for a musical theatre show, or do you mean how can you self-tape as an actor, as a musical theatre performer?
I mean, in the medium of musical theatre, of being auditioning for a musical, is it possible to self-tape in the medium of self-taping, or is it like just doesn't do us any justice, or just doesn't do the audition any justice?
No, I think they're so good. I'm partial to self-taping just anyway. I like it so much more than being in the room. I think especially initially because well, it works on both ends. You know, it works better for casting and for producers because you can cut costs there from the very start of the audition process. So I mean, it's good for them, but I also think it's really good for us because you are given an opportunity where you are in control of what you're presenting to them, which sometimes if you're in the room, you might not necessarily have that ability, especially if, you know, you get these auditions where you've had 2 days to prepare, you haven't slept, you go into the room, your bus was late, you're jittery from coffee, and you're just like, ugh! And then you fuck up the audition. Yeah. Self-taping in that sense is really helpful and can be really handy. So I would always prefer to self-tape, especially because I have done so much self-taping for acting things. So it's a comfortable medium for me to work in, I think. And if you are doing it properly, you can make it work so much more to your advantage.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the first thing that my ears pricked up was like, oh, they're going to save the producers money, the first round kind of thing. But I guess we can look at it and go, well, actually, we save ourselves a lot of money because we don't have to worry about getting the bus, getting there, you know, and that stress of that day, which kind of, you know, I can't work today because I have to do an audition. But if I have a self-tape, you've got your own hours, your parameters that you can do it in. So I think that's sort of definitely worth pointing out that, you know, sure, it does save the producers money, but it saves us so much time.
So much time. And that's like, I think that's probably one of the biggest stresses that we have as performers is trying to get out of work to get to auditions. And you even we base our whole lives around auditioning. So most of us are constantly working casual jobs that aren't very stable or secure. Thank you, coronavirus. And we build our whole lives around the ability to audition. But if you were self-taping, you've got a bit more freedom there to work jobs that give you a bit more security, I guess. If you wanted to go the full-time route, which is what I'm doing at the moment, I'm working full-time. And I definitely know that for me, it's better financially, it's more secure, but it also means that auditioning is very hard. So with the self-taping, you're right, it would eliminate so much stress from us to be able to self-tape.
Yeah. So what is it that you love about it, that you kind of go, you know what, I know that I can get across my personality. I know that I'm going to, you know, give my best version of myself. Or do you have any sort of tricks that you go, no, this is how I'm going to do it?
I have so many tricks.
Great.
So many tricks. I think that's what I like as well about self-tape. When you self-tape, you're not just being the performer on it because you want to present yourself in a way that you know will fit the show that you're going for. So you have to take on the role of director, cameraman, DP, and all of that, and take all of that into account when you're creating your self-tape. So you can kind of tailor your self-tape around whichever show that you're going for, if that makes sense. Say, for example, if you were self-taping for, you know, a show like Waitress, which is very raw, real, organic, it's played with live instruments, it's all about the performance, it's all about being so connected to the text and, you know, that kind of thing, you would tape something like that very differently than if you were putting down a self-tape for Follies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those both of those self-tapes ideally should look very differently when you put them down. Like, have similar elements, but they should look different, because your self-tape should reflect the style of the show.
Yeah.
So I guess what I mean is just simple things like, if you were self-taping for Secret Garden and you had to put that down, that obviously is like quite a classical piece. So you want to show off your voice. You want to show off, your acting skills when you're performing, things like that. You've got to be a lot more classical when you're presenting that. Then if you were putting down a tape like that, I would say go very simple, very minimal. You don't necessarily need live accompaniment, because you could get a great backing track for any of those tracks, and stick to something that is like sort of this frame, like waist up, which I think is a given in any self-tape environment. You would never film a self-tape of like your whole body unless they wanted to see you do like a triple pirouette or something, but you would always film sort of this, and then it would just be very still, very centered. You would present, the sound of the Secret Garden text as you were, and then moving on. But if you were going to self-tape for, say, like Waitress, for example, then you would be well within your rights to do that on like a background like this. It might not need to be as stripped back. It could be quite relaxed. You could have a guitarist sitting next to you who's kind of in frame but almost not, and then making sure that your torso is still very much like the focal point of the framing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's exciting because I've spoken to a couple of people and they're like, yeah, not, like I'm not into it, or there's this sort of a block where it's so exciting to hear you be like, no, like I'm loving this and I love using this medium. I guess social media is really shown that people can, kind of just jump online whenever they want. And I mean, you love performing, I'm assuming, like to in social media, because I get to watch you, and it is some of it. It's almost exactly what you've just said. That you've whatever time of day it is, and you're like, no, I'm doing this because I'm feeling this jam, or you're already showing different elements of who you are. Do you do that on purpose, or is that just because you love doing it?
On both, I think a little bit of both. Like, you've got to love the process of creating something. When you're putting down a self-tape, maybe not so much for acting, because if you're doing an acting self-tape, it's a bit different. But this is the way I think of it. This is the way I approach it. When you're putting down a musical theatre self-tape, because you are doing music, which is something very different to putting down lines and scene work, I think that to take a lot of creative liberty with putting that down, and if you can show as much of you as a performer as you possibly can when you're doing the music, then it can only benefit you.
Yeah. If you can't play music, you don't have an instrument, and you sort of talking about backing tracks before, I guess that's a good question. Like, whose responsibility do you think? Do you think the producers or the creative team should send something that is like a viable backing track that everyone has to use, so it's an equal playing field?
Yes, absolutely. But if they don't, then take that as an opportunity as well. If they're not sending you a backing track to do with your self-tape, then that's an opportunity to think, okay, what can I do here to use as a backing track that is going to set my self-tape apart from everyone else's? Am I going to sing a song that just has a double bass player? I know not everyone knows a double bass player, but things like that. Or I remember I put down one self-tape last year, and I was like, what can I do to make this as stylistically fitting to the show as I can, and also make this self-tape stand out? And so I decided to film it at a friend's house who just happens to have like a white baby grand piano. And I was like, oh, well, there's my backdrop. I'm going to do it in front of a white baby grand, and it's a gift if they don't give you a backing track. But I do think if if it were to be viable long term, then absolutely, like, level the playing field, give everyone the same backing tracks to work with. I did that the other week. I had to put one down and they sent us all backing tracks.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, and so pretty much everyone who was self-taping was doing it with the same backing tracks that the producers had sent through. And it was great. Like, they were great backing tracks, and you just make it work.
Yeah.
So that's what we just make it work.
Make it work. So you were saying before, you got a bit of a kit. What is some like must-haves if you're going to do this? Like what do you have to have?
To be honest, I've shot a bunch of good self-tapes, like music self-tapes, on an iPhone.
Yeah.
So, like, really, you actually don't need a whole lot. And iPhones are so good now, and Samsung, like, the sound on them is so good. That's probably like that'd do you. But I would say lighting is so important, to have good lighting in your tape. Because if you are self-taping and you don't have lighting that actually lights you, especially your eyes, if you're not lit properly and people can't see your eyes when you're performing, then you are lost on that flat screen.
Yeah.
You just become another coffee table and another armchair, because there's nothing about you that is engaging people and connecting people to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, lighting for sure. That's a really important one. And I mean, if you've got it, like, if you've got a fancy DSLR camera and it's got an external mic that you can use, fucking yes, use, like, absolutely. But I wouldn't say that is necessarily what you need to put down a good tape.
Yeah, but I think you can do the sort of top brands definitely like have some soft block lights, to either side. Things that people may not know, they're listening to this or they're watching it, but at least something to give you that. As you said, the eyes are so important.
Yeah.
But as you said, yeah, technology these days, most people do have a smartphone, and they're smart enough to pick up what we're after.
Yeah, like,
right?
you can definitely do it with just a smartphone. And then I would say as well, it would be handy to have some kind of a backdrop that you can put up if you need to. So like I went to Bunnings and I got a piece of dowel, and I got my mum to make me this big stretch of, like, just blue fabric. And that's my blue backdrop that I use. Like, you don't need to spend a bunch of money, but it is handy for sure to have some kind of backdrop to use.
What color do you use?
I use blue.
Yeah.
Just because blue, like a dark blue as well, because it looks good on camera and it makes you very, it makes you pop.
Yeah.
If you're at the forefront of it. But again, like, going back to what I said before, sometimes using a backdrop isn't appropriate to the show.
Yes. Yep.
Like, sometimes you want things to just feel a bit more raw and a bit more intimate than just you standing against a blue wall. But it's definitely handy to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all amazing. So I'm getting from you definitely, we can, like, it doesn't matter. This medium isn't something to balk at. It's definitely something that we should embrace. Yeah. Being stuck in isolation, I guess, is kind of teaching us that we have to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And use social media at the moment to kind of, I've spoken to a couple of casting directors and they're like, do it, make sure it's very good,